Yes, this is David Roskoff. I'm going through FLS Helper. It is a tool that is designed to help with the migration and configuration of FLS. If you go to flshelper.lbschurch.org, you will hit the application. Right now, we're on the first phase, and right now we've done the FLS compare. Here on the FLS compare, if you have the source and you have a target database environment. So here, if I wanted to compare dev to UAT, I would select UAT as my target and dev as my source. I click field listing. What field listing will do is it'll give me a list of what I can compare. So on the left here, there are a list of BPs I can select. So I can go down here and I can say I want to do the exception request BP. And I can say that I want to do workflows. Right now, workflows, fields, and permissions are the only ones that work. Forms and blocks don't quite work yet. Hopefully in new releases they'll work. Also, separate from BPs, if you want to just check the menu differences between two environments, you can also do that as well. So I select the BP and I say compare selected. Now once I click on compare selected, you'll see here at the top a spinner has started. Now what's happening is that it's going through the database and it's grabbing all the information from dev and it's grabbing all the information from UAT specific to workflows. And then it's going to go through the workflow data that we have and it's going to compare the data objects together and tell you where the differences are. So if there are no differences, then it means that the environments are exactly the same. So if you come back and there's no results, they're exactly the same. There's no differences at all. If there are differences, they'll show up here. So if I go under workflows, under exception requests, you'll see here a list of the workflows. And under each workflow, I can see what the differences are. So in this specific example, the 06F request review per prep PPO step has a smart form file set to true. That's the checkbox in smart form. But in dev, it doesn't have that. And so you can see how it's telling you all the differences between the two environments. The other thing you can do too is if you control P or print from your browser, you will actually, it will actually print, and I'll just do an Adobe PDF so you can see this. It will print just the results. So it won't print any of the stuff on the left or the header. It'll just print whatever's in the result plane. And so here, if you wanted to just print it off and try to go through each one and see where the errors are, you could do that. Other enhancements we're planning on doing is we're planning on letting you know what parts of the workflows are done. Currently, it's the workflow steps and the configuration of those steps, as well as just the label comparison. We haven't done the configuration of the labels yet, or the links. I meant not labels, of the links and of the decision points. And so, if you continue to use it, we'll be continuing to add functionality and hopefully build up a bigger, a stronger base for comparison. But this is a comparison tool and very simple to use. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the automation team. Hi, my name is David Roskoff, and today we're going to be looking at XPath and automation. Whenever you're running your automation, you always have to identify where elements are on a page. If you go to, let's say, Mormon.org, and if you hit F12, you can spy each of these tags here. Each of these HTML tags represent an element. And in order to figure out which tag you want to interact with, either click on or get information on or act or perform any kind of action on. You have to tell it how to find that. And there's two useful ways to do it. There's XPath and there's CSS selectors. In this presentation, we're going to go over XPath. So to give you a good example, let's say that I wanted to click on this people, and then I wanted to go to imamormon.org. Well, first, let's look at different XPaths we can do for people. So if you have Firebug and if you have a plugin called FirePath, if you don't, go ahead and get that. But a really useful tool. In this presentation, I'm going to use FirePath in order to help validate my XPath. XPath syntax is pretty simple. You do a double forward slash to say I want any child element, and then I could say span. What that'll do is that'll go through and it'll highlight every single span that I have in the page. Notice here at the bottom it says there's 190 matching nodes. In order for this to work for automation, I need to get down to one node. So I need to give it more information about the specific element that I want. And so let's say I want to do it by the parent. I'm looking for a span. So this is the element I'm trying to click on, but I'm going to go ahead and try to identify it by the parent and then the span after it. So I'm going to go span, and then in brackets, you do at to simplify the attribute, and you say class, and then in single quotes, you put in the class name. So in here, I would put in nav title text. Now if I run this, it's actually going to give me 4 matching spans because that title text is on 4 different spans here. It's on this one, values, beliefs, and visit. So I need to narrow it down even more. So the rule is if I do a double forward slash in span, it's going to give me all the spans that are underneath that span with a class. Now in this one I have one matching node now. I can either do, if I do a single double forward slash, it'll still return the same one. A single forward slash means it has to be a child. A double forward slash means it can be any child or grandchild or great-grandchild as long as it's underneath it. The reason why you might use a double forward slash is, let's say that a developer goes and changes this page, and they add another div around people. Well, if I did a forward slash span, my automation would break because div would be under the span as opposed to the, well, I could just edit this. No, I can't. The div would be over the span instead of directly, would be the direct child instead of the span. However, if I did a double forward slash, they could put anything between this and this span here, the parent span, and the child span. They can put as many HTML tags in between, and this would still validate. So it's always a good idea to try to use a double forward slash to simplify grandchildren. The other thing that we could do is we could use an attribute called text. This isn't really an attribute. What text is a function in XPath that allows you to identify the inner text. The inner text is the text that's between the HTML tags. So here in this text, if I said equals people in single quotes, and I hit enter, it still validates. Now why would I do this? Well, let's say that values ends up getting a span underneath it. Then I would have multiple matching nodes again. And so to help ensure that I only have one matching node, I'm going to say it has to be underneath this parent, it has to be a span, and that span has to have the inner text of people. This pretty much will help me make sure that I only get one node, and that this one node will still be clickable no matter how many different upgrades we do. Unless they get rid of spans and they replace them with something else, this test will still be valid. Let's do another exercise. So let's say that I wanted to do I'm a Mormon. So again, I take my tool, I go to I'm a Mormon. That tells me what's by it. So here, you notice there's a span and there's a anchor here. Now, I'm a big fan of clicking on anchors, and the reason why is sometimes I find that my automation, if it's clicking on something within the anchor or the link tag, if it goes to click on the span, sometimes it will fail to click because sometimes the action is actually on the link tag itself. And so in order to do that, in this example, there's a lot of different ways. So I could use the text. So I could say I'm looking for a span with the text attribute of I'm a Mormon. Now, I have to escape that. So if I wanted to simplify it, I could use quotations here, and that would escape that. So if I use quotations, it went ahead and matched. But I want you to notice something here on this page. I did text, but it matched twice on the page. I don't want it to match twice because my automation will fail half the time. And so what I need to do is I need to be able to narrow it down more. So what else am I looking for? Well, I could say, well, I'm a Mormon, but I also want it to be a link. But it has to be a parent. So I could do a dot dot to get the parent. Or I could say that I wanted to get the Now another way I can do this is I could say, so dot dot means just give me whatever the parent is. It doesn't matter what kind it is. If I want to be more specific, I can say ancestor and a double colon, and I could say I'm looking for an A tag with the item prop of URL. Item prop being the attribute, because I used the @ symbol, and then there's the name of the attribute right there. So now if I run this, I get the one matching node because it's looking for a span with this text that has an ancestor or a parent who has a link attribute with the item prop URL. And so now I can put this into my automation and it'll always click on the A tag, this specific A tag. The other thing you could have done as well, if you wanted to, you could have used the href as well. So let's say that I'm just wanting to click on the link and you really didn't clear, as long as it had that same href. So I could say I'm looking for a link with the href equals people. And I could do that. You'll notice here though at the bottom that I get 7 matching nodes for people. But again, if you don't care which one it clicks on, you can do that. The problem is that although you might have 2 visible here, there might be 3 more that aren't visible on the page. And if your automation gets one of the ones that aren't visible, then your automation will somewhat fail half the time. So best practice is to always try to narrow it down to the one. Now notice how I use single quotes versus double quotes. So in FirePath, you can use single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter. Sometimes if you have a semi, or if you have a single quote in your string, like I'm a Mormon has, then sometimes I'll use double quotes in order to check it because it's just faster than escaping it. The reason why I try to use single quotes as much as I can is because when you go to, because the C sharp defines a string as a double quote, and in C sharp, if you use double quotes, then you have to escape those double quotes. But if you use single quotes, you don't have to escape them in C sharp. So always use, if you're doing, automation, always use single quotes when you're actually defining your XPath. Let's take a look at some other options here. I'm going to go to the I'm a Mormon page. And you see this widget here on the right, the Meet Mormons. Other things you can do, and this is where I try to, this is a good example here of just making sure we understand XPath. So let's say I wanted to get a mail option here. Now there's a few ways to do it. I could say option with the value equals to m. Now, it didn't work. Look at it real quick, see if you can figure out why. The reason why it didn't work was because I didn't use the attribute value, the A. And now it comes up, it selected the mail, and only has one matching node, which is great. Now, best practice for me when dealing with dropdowns, because in automation you're going to click on the option, you're not going to click on the select. And so, best case in order to make sure that you always get the right value is to always add the select parent. In this case, I would add select, and I'm looking for a class of at name equals gender. And the reason why I do this is because if I don't add this select, and let's say that something else, let's say another dropdown's added, and that has the value of m, what will happen is your automation will break. And so in order to help to make sure that your automation is stable, I always make sure that I have it as finely defined as I can, but at the same time as open as I can. So this is a good example. Because I put in gender, it has to have a select box that name is gender, and that gender box also has to have an option in. And between the two of those, this makes it pretty stable automation. Other things you can do is you can also do it by text as well. So again, using a text attribute, I could say text equals male. The other thing you can do, sometimes my text attributes might have extra spaces or something. Sometimes I might just feel like I'm just looking for a contains. And there's a contains function in XPath. And what it is, it contains open and close parenthesis. And I can say in there either an attribute or a text value. So I could say, for instance, I could say I'm looking for at value, and the value has to contain an m. So if the value changed to male, this would still pass. If the value was m, this would still pass. And again, if I wasn't looking for attribute, I was looking for inner text, I can change this to the text. And it would go ahead and find me anything that contained male. If I did ALE, it would select both. It is case sensitive, and there is a function for case sensitivity as well. You could use translate, which isn't ideal. If you're using XPath 1.0 or your program is, you have to use something called translate. What translate does is it has three parameters. The first parameter is the text. The second parameter would be the uppercase characters, or the character that you want to translate. and then the second one is the lowercase. So if I did this here and hit enter, you'd see it would match on both, translating the uppercases, the uppercase M to lowercase m on whatever the text was. Again, not ideal. If your program supports 2.0, there is something called lowercase function where you would just do that. However, FirePath is 1.0, and so I can't really show you that works there, and your automation may not work as well, but it's also another option. That pretty much helps. So the reason why XPath over CSS, XPath allows a lot more granularity. It allows me to check the inner text. It allows me to select parents. CSS seems to have a lot of issues when it comes to navigating up to parents and also being able to select inner text. And so because of those two options, for some of my complicated element finding, I'll use XPath. And that concludes this session. I hope you're understood, and if you have questions, feel free to email me, droscoff@gmail.com.